My sister and I were the most beautiful twins in the orphanage, and at the same time, two families chose us, a family of doctors and a wealthy family. In the past life, my sister was blinded by wealth and without hesitation, got into that luxurious Maybach. However, instead of a fairy tale life, she was met by a hot-tempered and disabled heir of the family. She was made to understand that she was nothing but his property and would be buried with him after his death. As for me, I was adopted by the family of doctors, reached great heights in my medical career, and became a leading specialist at the hospital, enjoying the care and attention of my talented and cold stepbrother. I was treated like a princess. But my sister could not accept such an outcome, and on the day of my wedding, she drove a knife into my heart. "Why should only I suffer?" were her last words before my death. When I woke up, I realized that we had returned to the past, to the very day we were supposed to be adopted. This time, my sister rushed to the doctor's wife first. I just smiled, watching her satisfied back. In the past life, she couldn't even handle the distant heir of the wealthy family, and now she hopes to outmaneuver the cunning and calculating? The James and Lucas families gave us the choice to decide for ourselves. Sophia, Amelia, decide who you'll go with. I was about to open my mouth to refuse both options, but my sister immediately grabbed Mrs. James' hand. "Aunt, you are so beautiful. And you smell so nice. I'll go with you." At that moment, I understood. She had also been reborn. After all, in the past life, her choice was completely different. That day, the James family, involved in medicine, and the Lucas family, owners of immense wealth, arrived at the orphanage with the intention of adopting the girls. My sister and I, being the most beautiful twins, immediately attracted their attention. They offered us to make the choice. We were only 8 years old, and we didn't know much about medicine. But as soon as my sister heard the word richest, she rushed to the wife of the magnate. "Aunt, you are so beautiful. I'll go with you." Thus, my sister became the adopted daughter of the Lucas family, and I was taken in by the family of doctors. More than 10 years passed. I became a first-class doctor, and my life with my adopted brother turned into a beautiful fairy tale. People said we were the perfect couple. My adoptive parents and brother doted on me. To everyone, I was the little princess of the James family, the envy and admiration of thousands of people. But among these people was my sister. After moving to the Lucas house, her life turned into a nightmare. The wealthy family was full of intrigues. Her stepmother was a two-faced woman, and her stepbrother was grim and unstable. The wife of the rich man assured everyone that she adopted the girl so her stepson wouldn't feel lonely. But when alone with my sister, her words were different. "Sophia, I brought you here so you could take care of your brother. Remember, his well-being is your well-being. But if anything happens to him, you'll share his fate. Do you understand?" My sister tried to escape, but she was always brought back. The family heir initially ignored her, but her attempts to run away drew his attention. She became his plaything, locked in a golden cage with no way out. Living in constant fear broke her. And when she saw how I was pampered in the James family, her envy flared up again, burning the last remnants of common sense. That's when our tragedy began. In the moment I was set to marry my adopted brother, my sister suddenly charged at me with a knife and struck me in the chest with a single blow. Just before I collapsed, I could still hear her frantically crying out, "Why am I the only one living such a miserable life?" But in the next instant, the knife was removed from my heart. It was my adopted brother who had done it. His face was expressionless, and his dark eyes were void of any emotion, yet he proceeded to stab my sister repeatedly until she too collapsed. I managed to glance at her one last time before my life faded away. Now, reborn, I had no intention of repeating the errors of my past life. However, my sister pushed me forward, presenting me to the wife of the wealthiest man. "Sis, I'll give you the life of luxury in the richest family. Don't thank me too much." The richest man's wife took my hand with a warm smile, saying, "Amelia, come home with Mom." I turned to my sister, who smiled back at me with narrowed eyes and waved. "Sis, goodbye." I smiled as well. "Sister, since you were so eager to steal my life in the past, I hope you don't regret it." I followed the richest man's wife home. It wasn't just because I was still a child. If I refused to be adopted by the richest family, the orphanage director would retaliate and withhold any benefits. Besides, I had my eyes on their wealth. As soon as we entered the mansion, the richest man's wife immediately called for the butler. Quickly, bring the young master down. The butler nodded and swiftly led others upstairs. Moments later, an angry voice echoed from above. Get out! And take that woman with you. I glanced up at the richest man's wife. Her gaze lingered upstairs, and from this angle, I noticed the cold satisfaction in her eyes. She suddenly looked down at me with sharp eyes. What are you staring at? Are you scared? I did my best to appear timid, hiding behind her. Mom, is that my brother? He seems so frightening. The richest man's wife immediately held my hand and took me upstairs. The angry voice became louder as we ascended, yet she still smiled gently and led me into the room. Lucas, why are you throwing another tantrum? Look, I've brought someone for you. She pushed me forward. This is your sister. Isn't she sweet and lovely? Now you have a sister to keep you company. A vase flew across the room, cutting her words short. Mom, be careful. I used the opportunity to shove her aside and dodged the vase myself. Lucas's voice grew more agitated, and I saw the flicker of deep hatred in his eyes. Leave. Everyone get out. The richest man's wife waved at the butler and servants, signaling them to leave. She then took both my shoulders, bent down, and whispered, Amelia, take care of your brother from now on. Do whatever he asks of you. I brought you here to cheer him up and make him happy. Remember, if he's well, so are you. If anything happens to him, you'll go with him. Understand? I bit my lip, forcing out a tear. Mom, I'm scared. Her eyes turned cold and sharp. What are you scared of? Go and play with your brother. She let go of me and straightened up, smiling softly at the furious Lucas. Lucas, spend some time with your sister. Andy won't bother you anymore. With that, she exited and carefully closed the door. Once she was gone, I wiped my tear away, turned to face Lucas, and the fear was gone from my face. Lucas's cold gaze remained locked on me. His lips parted, and he spoke with a chill. Leave. I took a step forward. I won't. Lucas narrowed his eyes dangerously. You're just a pawn this woman brought in to keep an eye on me. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? I raised an eyebrow. If you kill me, you'll never get back on your feet. Fury contorted Lucas's perfect features. You're asking for it. I glanced back at the door to ensure the richest man's wife wasn't listening, then lowered my voice, speaking softly enough that only Lucas could hear. I can heal your legs. Lucas scoffed. You? An 8-year-old girl? Yes, me. I took another step, closing the distance between us. And now you can only trust me. Lucas finally seemed to recognize something wasn't right. Who are you really? I shrugged. Just an 8-year-old girl. Lucas sneered. That woman sure has her ways. I can't underestimate you, can I? It's not her, it's me, I replied confidently. I stretched out my hand. I'll fix your legs. Once you regain control of the Lucas family, you can deal with her however you want. But don't forget to repay me. My skills aren't free, Lucas. At that moment, confusion overtook the 15-year-old boy's face. Who are you? I leaned in close to his ear and whispered. An 8-year-old girl. Lucas. Over the next few days, I lived a life of outward compliance but inward defiance. In front of the richest man's wife, I pretended to fear Lucas, avoided spending time with him, and endured her threats multiple times. Meanwhile, I secretly examined Lucas's condition and devised a treatment plan. This treatment, created by the James family in our past life, would only be discovered 10 years later. But in this life, I, an 8-year-old girl, was the only one who knew it. Still, Lucas refused to trust me. You've been acting mysteriously every day. If I find out you're lying or deceiving me, I'll make sure you disappear without a trace. I squatted down beside his legs and rolled my eyes at his words. You're so powerful, yet you're still controlled by your stepmother. Why not just make sure she disappears without a trace instead? Lucas was speechless. I patted his leg reassuringly. Brother, don't worry. I'll definitely do what I said. I'm still waiting for you to repay me. Lucas looked at me with a skeptical look. Then when on earth can I stand up? Shh. I put my finger to my lips. If your stepmother hears it, you'll be the one who dies without a burial place. The richest man's wife was definitely a formidable character. She killed the richest man quietly and then disabled Lucas's legs in the same way. And now, although most of the shares of the Lucas Group were in Lucas's hands, he was still a minor. Several scheming shareholders of the Lucas Group blatantly supported the richest man's wife, and Lucas was seeing his position in the Lucas Group decline day by day. So the treatment had to be carried out secretly. Otherwise, if the richest man's wife found out, I might really have to be buried with Lucas. Brother, let's go abroad. Coincidentally, both you and I have to go to school. Once we're abroad and out of your stepmother's sight, it'll be easier for me to operate. Lucas had an expression of sudden realization. So that's what you're up to. Did that woman tell you to say this? Want to send me abroad and then kill me directly? Why would she kill you? You're already crippled. Even if the shares are still in your hands, you're no threat to her. She just wants me to keep an eye on you and torture you some more. Lucas looked at me silently, thought for a while, and nodded. Okay. Lucas proposed to the richest man's wife that he wanted to go abroad. The richest man's wife was very surprised. Lucas, why do you suddenly want to go abroad? Lucas was impatient. I'm just telling you. Do you really think I'm asking for your permission? The richest man's wife smiled gently. Of course, I'll support whatever you do. Then you can go. I'll find someone to help you find a school and handle the formalities. I was secretly delighted. Of course, this was all just an act for the richest man's wife to see. She gave me a look and said, Amelia, you go with your brother. I'll also help you find a school. I immediately put on an extremely reluctant expression, on the verge of crying. But the cold and harsh voice of the richest man's wife interrupted me. There's no but. Don't forget your identity. Lucas patted me on the top of my head with his hand and said maliciously, Sister, come abroad with brother. In this life, you're brother's dog when you're alive, and when you die, you'll be brother's dead dog. When it was time to treat him, I'd make him suffer. However, when I thought that I could go abroad and go to school soon, I felt much better. At least in this life, I could take control of my own life and live like a normal person. As for my sister, she should be very happy now, right? Don't worry, the true face of her adoptive brother won't be hidden for long. Suddenly, a devilish voice popped into my mind without warning. Amelia, who's that boy? Do you like him? Amelia, you're so disobedient. Amelia, do you like this chain? What about this cage? Brother likes the way you're tied up in the cage. That way, you'll be brothers alone. Amelia, you belong to brother. Whether in this life or the next life, for all eternity, you can only belong to brother, Amelia. Ah! I covered my ears and screamed. The richest man's wife said sternly, Amelia, are you crazy? Your brother just touched your head. Why are you screaming? I suddenly came to my senses. When I turned my head, I met Lucas's inquiring gaze. Everything had changed in this life. I breathed a slight sigh of relief, shook my head and said, Sorry, I won't dare to do it again. It seemed that I still hadn't completely removed the shadow of my previous life from my heart. Fortunately, I was about to go abroad and be far away from here. 10 years later, my sister was extremely surprised when she saw me in the university dormitory. Emily, why are you studying medicine too? Didn't you go abroad? I smiled and reminded her. Sister, my name is Amelia now. My words reminded my sister. She looked me up and down and suddenly laughed. How's it going? Were the years abroad tough? It's not like in our country. Abroad, even if you wanted to call the police wouldn't side with you. I pretended to be confused. Sister, what are you talking about? My sister gave a knowing smile. All right, I understand. Just swallow your grievances. I'm already surprised that Lucas, that crazy dog, has let you live until now. After all, you don't have a brain like mine and can survive under his thumb. I still pretended not to understand. Sister, why are you talking about my brother? My sister sneered contemptuously. You can't fool me, Emily. Oh no, Amelia. I just looked at her doubtfully and didn't say anything more. I went to tidy up my own luggage. At the entrance of the dormitory, a series of soft footsteps gradually approached. That sound seemed etched into my memory, ingrained in the very core of my being. 10 years had passed, yet the moment I heard it again, my body tensed involuntarily. A figure appeared in the doorway. I took a deep breath, silently stood up, and turned to face the man who had just walked in. James, my adoptive brother from my past life. But he didn't even glance at me. The moment he stepped inside, his gaze locked directly onto my sister. She stood frozen, as if turned to stone. Her eyes fixed on James as though she were incapable of looking away. James approached her as if no one else existed. His fair hand gently brushed against her cheek. When he spoke, his voice was soft, yet carried an unmistakable authority, like invisible chains binding the soul. Sophia, why are you disobeying your brother again? Didn't I tell you not to stay in the dormitory? Come on, let's go home. His tone was gentle, yet refusal seemed impossible. My sister trembled, her voice carrying a note of desperation. I want to live here, brother. Please, just this once, let me make my own decision. James smiled, a soft, almost tender smile. But in his eyes, cold and heat intertwined. I knew that look all too well. In my past life, it was the same look he had used to imprison me. Sophia, be a good girl. She swallowed hard, her voice growing weaker. Brother, please. I promise I'll come home every Friday. The air around James suddenly turned ice cold. Is there a boy you like at school? My sister quickly shook her head. No, brother, believe me. I don't like anyone. It was only then that James seemed to notice my presence. Slowly, he turned his head toward me, his gaze now void of emotion. Yet, the moment his eyes clearly took in my face, a flicker of surprise flashed across his features. He pulled my sister into his embrace, the corners of his lips curving into a barely perceptible smile. Amelia, you're Sophia's sister, aren't you? For a moment, I saw golden bars flash before my eyes, those same cages James had once used to imprison me. My chest tightened, and breathing became difficult. A memory resurfaced, me, kneeling at his feet in utter humiliation, my face streaked with tears. Brother, please. Let me go. I had even called him that. James crouched in front of me, his cold hand slowly lifting my chin. No way, Emily. If I let you go and you run away, where will I ever find you again? You know your brother can't live without you. But that was all in the past. Yes, merely shadows of the past. I let out a quiet sigh of relief, forcing a small smile, and nodded. I'm Amelia. James smiled knowingly. No wonder. No wonder Sophia insisted on staying in the dormitory. So she knew her sister had returned from abroad and wanted to reunite with her. He turned back to my sister. Amelia, then I'll allow you to stay here for a few days. I'll come to pick you up soon. My sister's tense expression eased slightly. She nodded. Okay. Thank you, brother. James gently patted her head. There's no need to thank your brother. He leaned down, pressing a light kiss to her forehead, then gently stroked her cheek once more. After that, he gave me a polite nod and walked out. At the door of the dormitory, a series of low footsteps were getting closer and closer. That sound seemed to be engraved in my genes and branded on my soul. Even though 10 years had passed, when I heard that familiar sound again, my body still stiffened involuntarily. The person had already walked in. I took a deep breath, silently stood up, and turned to look at the man who walked in, my adoptive brother in my previous life, James. But James didn't even look at me. The moment he came in, he locked his eyes on my sister directly. My sister's stiff body stood there like cement, and her eyes seemed to stop working, fixed on James as if she couldn't move them away. James walked up to my sister as if no one else was around. His fair hand gently stroked my sister's cheek. When he opened his mouth, his cool voice with his unique tone was like a pair of shackles trying to imprison people's souls. Sophia, why are you disobeying brother again? Didn't brother tell you not to live in the dormitory? Come on, come home with brother. His voice was gentle, but it carried an undeniable meaning. My sister's body began to tremble, and even her voice was trembling. I want to live in the dormitory, brother. Please let me make my own decision just this once. James smiled, a smile so soft. The look in his eyes when he looked at my sister was like the intersection of ice and fire. I was all too familiar with that look. In my previous life, James used that look to imprison me. Sophia, be obedient. My sister swallowed hard, and her choked voice grew weaker. She begged, brother, please, please. I promise I'll go home every Friday. The aura around James suddenly turned icy cold. Is there a boy you like at school? My sister shook her head vigorously. No, brother, believe me. I don't like any boys. It was as if James noticed me only then. When he slowly turned his head to look at me, the emotions in his eyes had disappeared, leaving only a calm and emotionless look. But when he clearly saw my face, a fleeting look of surprise still flashed across his expression. He pulled my sister into his arms, and the corners of his lips curled up in a barely noticeable arc. Amelia, you're Sophia's sister, right? It seemed that several golden metal bars appeared in front of my eyes. Those were the cages that James used to imprison me. My neck felt tighter and tighter, and it became difficult to breathe. I knelt at his feet in the most wretched posture, with the most humble and helpless expression, crying as I begged him. Brother, please let me go, please. I even called out to him. James squatted down in front of me. That cold big hand slowly lifted my chin. No way, Emily. If I let you go and you run away, where can brother find you? Emily, you know brother can't live without you. All of these were things from my previous life. Yes, things from my previous life. I silently let out a sigh of relief, smiled, and nodded. I'm Amelia. James smiled knowingly. No wonder. No wonder Sophia insisted on living in the dormitory. It turns out that she knew her sister had come back from abroad and wanted to reunite with her sister. He turned around to face my sister again. Amelia, then brother will let you live in the dormitory for a few days. Brother will come to pick you up in a few days. My sister's tense face relaxed a little. She nodded and said, Okay, thank you, brother. James gently patted my sister on the head and said, There's no need to thank brother. He lowered his head and placed a gentle kiss on my sister's forehead, then touched her cheek again. After that, he nodded politely to me and went out. My sister's legs went weak, and she sat down on the edge of the bed. I walked over and took in my sister's pale face. Sister, what's wrong with you? Why are you so afraid of your brother? Doesn't he treat you well? My sister was like a robot that had run out of power and just got reconnected. She raised her eyes to look at me and suddenly laughed. Amelia, in fact, you didn't have an easy life in your previous life either, right? Jay is a pervert, a devil. How could he possibly let you go? It's all fake. Everything is fake. I was deceived by the appearance you created. You also lived in a living hell in your previous life. The more she talked, the more she laughed. I feel much more balanced in my heart. Really? A chill ran through my heart. The reason she felt balanced was that she knew that I had also been tortured a lot by James in my previous life. She knew that the people in the James family told James that as long as he became a medical genius, he could have whatever he wanted, and that this sister was a toy for him to play with as he liked. She knew that I had been locked in that cage for more than half a year and lived a life worse than a dog. It turned out that my sister could accept her own miserable life as long as I was also having a hard time. In my ears, my sister's voice continued. But soon such days will come to an end. As long as I become a medical genius, everyone in the James family will have to listen to me. Then, it will be my turn to torture them. A malicious thought emerged in my heart, and I interrupted her dream with my words. Sister, what are you talking about? Why do I feel that you seem a bit abnormal mentally when I see you this time? My sister came back to her senses from her dream and looked at me with a sneer. It's not a dream. What I said will definitely come true in the near future. Suddenly, she thought of something and stared at me. Why are you studying medicine too? Are you also? Am I also reborn? Actually, it wouldn't matter if I told her. Since my sister chose the James family at the beginning of this life, everything has changed completely. No matter how much trouble she tries to stir up, it won't work. But I won't tell her that I'm reborn. Just let her think that she's the only one with the script of her previous life, waiting for a counterattack. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. I want to see my sister's desperate look, just as revenge for her killing me in my previous life. In my previous life, I was freed only after my sister ended my life. But I won't be grateful to my sister because of that. I hate my sister. And I hate James even more. But in this life, I just want to live my own life well and live like a normal person. I pretended not to understand and even said that my sister was crazy. My sister didn't care. Anyway, James loves me in this life. I was killed by him in my previous life. Why don't I turn him into my murder weapon in this life?
Amelia, I don't care if you know something or not. behave yourself. Otherwise, I'll ask James to kill you. Although he's a pervert, he loves me deeply and he will definitely listen to me. I wanted to tell my sister that James is a devil, and isn't she one too? But I just shook my head helplessly. Sister, you're really seriously ill. My sister had to call James to report every night. At this time, my mobile phone also rang with a notification sound. It was a WeChat message from Lucas. Brother, disappeared just because you're in college? Don't you know to give brother a call? Although it was just text, I could still sense a tone of haughty pride. You're in the apartment near the university. If you're worried, just come and have a look. What's there to talk about on the phone? Saying that I'm fine and you don't need to worry? Brother, do I need to worry about an 18-year-old adult? You're going to college, not going to northern Myanmar. Now I'm an 18-year-old adult, not an 8-year-old girl anymore. Another message from Lucas came. Brother, I'll pick you up on Friday. That woman asked us to go back for a meal. The act still has to continue. Got it. Brother, good night. It's just past 7 o'clock. What if good night? During the military training, the playground was very lively and there were many people showing their talents. But I was really tired, so I went back to the dormitory to rest. My sister came back so early because she had to report to James and didn't want to be overheard. I heard it. Brother, I really don't have a boy I like. The reason I want to stay at school is really just because I want to be with my sister. I love brother. I only love brother. In my previous life, James always forced me to say this too. His family only regarded him as a tool for seeking fame and reputation and never gave him a bit of true love. People who lack love to the extreme are like this. But that can't be an excuse for him to torture others. If he's really sad because of lack of love, then just go and die. I pushed the door open and went in. My sister was startled at first. When she saw clearly that it was me, she immediately dragged me over. Brother, look, my sister has also come back to the dormitory. She also has a lot to talk to me about. James just took a look at me on the screen and then said goodbye to my sister. After the video call was hung up, an expression of disgust appeared on my sister's face. When she turned her head and saw that I was looking at her, she immediately glared at me fiercely. What are you looking at? I warn you, behave yourself. Don't say what you shouldn't say. If you dare to have any ideas, you'll be the one who gets hurt in the end. James loves me in this life. I laughed mockingly. Sister, you always talk about the previous life and this life. It's okay if you just tell me, but if others hear it, they will definitely say that you're crazy. Also, it seems that you hate your brother a lot, but you always keep saying that he only loves you. Don't you have Stockholm Syndrome? I don't. My sister lowered her voice and muttered in a low voice, I just really dislike him. She then asked me, don't you dislike Lucas? Are you talking about my brother? I shook my head and went on, no, I don't dislike him. My brother treats me extremely well. My sister sneered, stop trying to tough it out. Would that cripple be nice to you? James is a pervert. Is that cripple any better? I should have refused to be adopted by them back then. Who could say otherwise? She was clearly killed by James in her previous life, but after being reborn, she didn't hesitate to choose the James family. If she had refused to be adopted and made use of the golden finger from her previous life, she could have lived a good life in this life too. The same goes for me. But the two of us still followed the old paths of our previous lives, even though we had swapped our paths. However, I'm confident that my path in this life will be smoother and I'll make progress faster. Friday. After the military training, I went back to the dormitory to change clothes and was about to go to find Lucas. My sister also changed her clothes, and the two of us walked out of the dormitory building together. 2 luxury cars were parked side by side not far away. The Bentley was James's, and the Aston Martin was Lucas's. Seeing my sister, James got out of the car and walked towards us at a leisurely pace. He directly took my sister's hand and smiled kindly at me. How were the two of you sisters this week? I was just about to speak when Lucas's driver got out of the car. He took out a folding wheelchair, opened it, and then helped Lucas get out and sit in the wheelchair. My sister looked over and subconsciously held onto James's arm. Just as I had a shadow about James, my sister also had a shadow about Lucas. James was flattered. He looked down at my sister's hand tightly holding his arm, and the corners of his lips curved up silently. What's the matter, Sophia? My sister came to her senses and gave James a sweet smile. Nothing. I just missed you, brother. James's eyes were tender. He lowered his head and placed a kiss on my sister's forehead. I missed you too. Lucas had already come over. He also recognized my sister at a glance. Although my sister and I had lived in very different environments over the years and our appearances were not as similar as before, it was still obvious at a glance that we were twins. Amelia, is this your sister? Lucas gave my sister a faint smile. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Then he extended his hand to my sister. My sister hesitated for a moment, shook hands with Lucas, and then said, "Don't blame my sister. Please don't hit her." She wasn't speaking up for me at all. She was clearly gloating. A look of surprise flashed across Lucas's face. He glared at me. Amelia, is this how you ruin my reputation outside? When did I ever hit you? I didn't say that. It was just my sister's assumption. Besides, don't you remember? When we first met, you threw a vase at me. The corner of Lucas's eye twitched slightly. Shut up. I immediately closed my mouth. My sister burst out laughing. It was obvious that she was really happy to see that I wasn't having an easy time. She gave me a sympathetic yet satisfied look, then tightened her grip on James's arm. Brother, let's go home. James replied indifferently. He withdrew his cold gaze from Lucas's hand. Let's go. Then he took my sister and got into the car. Suddenly, I got goosebumps. I was all too familiar with this feeling. James's possessiveness had flared up again. Because my sister had shaken hands with another man, my sister was going to have a tough night tonight. I hadn't seen the richest man's wife since I returned to the country. When I saw her again, she didn't seem to have changed at all. She was well maintained and still looked so young and beautiful. However, over the years, I had always kept in touch with her because I had to provide her with everything about Lucas. The richest man's wife was still quite satisfied with my performance. Lucas was already 25 years old. After becoming an adult, he should have taken back the company, but now the richest man's wife still had the final say in the company. The richest man's wife had become overconfident. At the dinner table, she actually said directly to Lucas, "Lucas, you've been abroad for so many years and haven't asked much about the company's affairs. I've also managed the company very well. However, after all, I'm not the largest shareholder of the company, and it's quite inconvenient for me to make decisions." She paused for a moment before continuing, "Lucas, transfer your shares to my name. If you're not at ease, I'll buy them from you. We're all family. After your father passed away, I've always taken care of you as if you were my own son. Don't you trust me?" Lucas put down his chopsticks. His voice was neither too loud nor too soft, but it hit everyone's heart just right. The richest man's wife stared at Lucas without blinking, still maintaining a smile on the surface. Lucas slowly raised his eyes to meet the richest man's wife's gaze, curved his lips and smiled faintly. "Since it's inconvenient for you, starting from tomorrow, I'll officially take over the company. I won't trouble you anymore, Auntie." The richest man's wife didn't take Lucas's words to heart. "Lucas, there are some things that Auntie is afraid of hurting your self-esteem if I say them, but I still have to say them." Her gaze fell on Lucas's legs. "Your legs? The company has some complaints about your legs. If outsiders see that the Lucas Group is led by a disabled person, the prestige of the entire Lucas Group will decline significantly." Lucas nodded, as if he quite agreed with the richest man's wife's words. The richest man's wife smiled with satisfaction. "Then, name your price." "You name the price." Lucas put his hands on the armrests of the wheelchair. "I'll buy your shares." The richest man's wife said with a smile, "You still don't understand what I mean." "I understand." Lucas slowly stood up. In the shocked gaze of the richest man's wife, he walked towards her step by step. "Now, can I take over the company?" The richest man's wife's eyes widened, and her gaze seemed to be fixed on Lucas's face as if nailed there. After a long, long time, she finally managed to make a sound. How can you stand up?" Suddenly remembering something, the richest man's wife sprang to her feet. "Amelia, you betrayed me." I shrugged innocently. "You've been threatening me all along and even said that I should be buried with my brother. Do you expect me to be loyal to you?" The richest man's wife flew into a rage. She was just about to rush towards me when, in the next second, Lucas tightly gripped her by the neck. Compared to Lucas's calm demeanor, the richest man's wife's face quickly turned as red as a tomato. She struggled hard, and all the elegance and nobility around her disappeared completely. Let me go. Lucas loosened his grip, and the richest man's wife's body went limp and she fell heavily to the ground. Lucas looked down at her and laughed. Auntie, I know you have a lot to say, but not now. If you have anything to say, you can tell the police. Although Lucas had been abroad in the past 10 years, he hadn't been idle. While receiving my treatment, he had also been collecting evidence of the richest man's wife's crimes. 10 years was enough time to do anything. Lucas had already handed over all the evidence that the richest man's wife had killed the richest man and disabled his legs to the police. Soon, the richest man's wife was taken into custody. And Lucas officially took over the Lucas Group. As for those who were in cahoots with the richest man's wife, they could hardly protect themselves now and couldn't cause any trouble at all. I stayed by Lucas's side throughout the whole weekend until he took the position of the chairman. I extended my hand to him. You promised me. Can you give it to me now? Lucas furrowed his dark eyebrows slightly and slapped my palm with his big hand. What's the rush? I pursed my lips and withdrew my hand. Lucas shook his head with a smile. Don't worry. I won't go back on my word. I'll set up a laboratory for you first. Once you graduate from university, you can form your own medical team. When has brother ever broken his promise to you? I giggled and put my arms around Lucas's neck from behind. Lucas slapped my arm. You're 18 now, not an 8-year-old girl anymore. Behave yourself. He was quite virtuous when it came to propriety between men and women. On Monday, I went back to school. As expected, I didn't see my sister. She didn't participate in the military training, and surprisingly, the instructor didn't say anything. It was obvious that James had already made arrangements with the school. It wasn't until half a month later, long after our military training was over, that my sister came back. This time when I saw her, it was obvious that she seemed like a walking corpse, as if her soul had been taken away. I noticed that she was wearing a turtleneck. Even without looking inside, I knew there must be marks from being tied on her neck. I tapped her gently. My sister immediately jumped up as if she had been electrocuted, like a frightened bird. Don't. What are you doing? Sister, what's wrong with you? My sister shook her head repeatedly. I'm fine. She suddenly shouted loudly, it's none of your business. I shrugged. I don't even want to bother with you either. My sister grabbed my arm tightly. Her eyes like black holes stared at me as if she wanted to suck me in. Sister, let's change back. She shook her head. No, I'm not feeling well. Will you accompany me to the hospital tomorrow? I was just about to refuse when a fleeting image flashed through my mind. Some terrifying memories burst out along with my intuition at this moment. I lowered my eyes and my gaze fell on my sister's belly. Could it be what I thought? The hospital my sister mentioned should be the private hospital of the James family. In my previous life when I was 18 years old, James took me there. He performed the operation himself, removed my uterus and then smiled with great satisfaction and told me in my ear, Amelia, this way you won't get pregnant. Without a child, you'll be brothers alone from now on. Was James going to remove my sister's uterus too? Did my sister want me to take her place? I clenched my hands tightly and couldn't help but raise my hand and slap my sister hard across the face. But my sister didn't seem to feel the pain. She grabbed my arm tightly again. Sister, come with me. You must come. You have to. I pushed her away and said in the most vicious tone, Sophia, go to hell. I ran out of the dormitory and called Lucas. Soon, my sister also came out. She ran towards me like a ghost chasing after me. Sister, don't run. Come back. I kept running outside the school until I bumped into Lucas's arms. Catch her. My sister shouted hoarsely. When she saw that I had stopped, she smiled excitedly and rushed towards me in big strides. Sister, aren't you my good sister? Since you're my sister, you should sacrifice for me. Lucas pushed my sister away as she came closer. My sister's expression turned fierce. She was just about to pounce on Lucas, but when she clearly saw Lucas's face, she was completely stunned. After a long, long time, she came to her senses and shook her head desperately. Your legs. How can you stand up? Why is this happening? You too, Lucas, let her go. Why are you protecting her? Wouldn't it be better if she died? Aren't you supposed to dislike her? What? Don't you know? She's your stepmother's person. She's been spying on you for your stepmother all along. She even wants to kill you. Lucas tightly protected me behind him. Just then, James arrived. Seeing James, my sister completely broke down. She directly knelt at James's feet. "Brother, please forgive me. Don't modify my brain. I'll die." She suddenly pointed at me again. "Emily is your sister. She should be your sister. It's not me, not me. You love Emily. Take her back." She kowtowed desperately to James until blood oozed from her forehead. "Please forgive me. Forgive me." James gently helped my sister up and smiled at Lucas and me. "Amelia, your sister has been in a very unstable mood recently. I'll take her home first." No matter how hard my sister struggled, she couldn't break free from James's restraint. She was dragged into the car by James. I knew that once my sister was taken back by James this time, she would completely lose her freedom. Just as I was still watching, I was already dragged into the car by Lucas. When we got home, he asked me, "What on earth is going on? What happened between your sister and James? Why did your sister say that you are James's sister?" I told Lucas everything about our previous life and also admitted that I was reborn. Lucas accepted it quickly because he had always been suspicious back then that as an 8-year-old, how could I possess such superb medical skills? Now everything made sense. "So, in the previous life, you were by James's side, and by my side was your sister?" I nodded. Lucas came over and hugged me. "In the previous life, did you also become like your sister?" I burst into tears in Lucas's arms, pouring out all my vulnerability, grievances, and hatred. "James is a pervert. When I was 18, he forcibly removed my uterus because he didn't want me to have children. He didn't want to share me with anyone. He locked me in a cage and chained me. Amelia, Amelia." Lucas recited my name and hugged me tightly. "Those were all things in the previous life. Now I'm the one by your side." He let go of me and cupped my cheeks. "Amelia, look at me. It's me. I'll protect you. I won't allow anyone to hurt you." Tears blurred my vision, but I could still clearly see Lucas's face. All the negative emotions in my heart gradually dissipated. I took a deep breath. "I'll protect myself too. Okay?" Lucas hugged me tightly again. "Brother will give you whatever you want. As long as you can become strong and protect yourself, brother will do anything for you." Because the evidence was conclusive, even if the richest man's wife hired a lawyer, she couldn't reverse the case. What awaited her was the death penalty. But obviously, Lucas didn't care about the richest man's wife anymore. He said to me, "Amelia, I'll avenge you." I knew what he meant. He was going to take action against James. I held his hand. "Brother, don't be impulsive. Let's first see if James will make any moves." After being reborn, I didn't want to take revenge at all. I just wanted to live my own life well and make myself strong enough to protect myself from being hurt by anyone. Lucas didn't continue talking about revenge. But then I received a call from James. He asked me to meet him. Naturally, I refused. But then the heart-rending screams of my sister came from the other end of the phone. "Amelia, did you hear that?" James's gloomy and sinister voice came with a hint of a smile. "That's your sister. She killed you in the previous life, and in this life, she's fallen into brother's hands again. Brother will avenge you." My hand loosened and my mobile phone almost dropped. The hairs on my body all stood on end. "James, you..." James's laughter came through the phone and drilled into my ears like an evil wind blowing up from hell. "Sister, I'm also reborn. After I killed your sister, I was locked up for 10 years. After I got out, I immediately went to look for you. I said that even if I had to go to hell, I would be with you." I hung up the phone abruptly. That devil was back. He had come for me. But this time, I couldn't just sit and wait for death. I went to meet James. He tied my sister up in a villa in the suburbs, locked her in a cage and chained her. When my sister saw me, she broke down and cried loudly, shouting with all her strength, "Help me. Sister, help me." James walked over and hugged me in his arms, his voice full of obsession. "Amelia, you came after all. I knew you wouldn't abandon brother. Amelia, brother missed you so much." In these 10 years, brother thought of you every day. But brother had to get out so that he could find you. Do you miss brother? I pushed him away hard and glared at him with hatred. James, I hate you. James didn't get angry but laughed instead. It was really a perverted laugh, excited, bloody, and cruel. Amelia, you love me. You just don't know it yourself. I took a deep breath. James, do you love me? I love you, Amelia. Of course I love you. James came over and hugged me again. Amelia, I love you. Love you. I leaned close to his ear and said word by word, then why don't you just die? James's body stiffened. In the next moment, the police rushed in. Put your hands up. James just glanced at the police and then his gaze fell on my face again. He laughed again, but this time his laugh was somewhat desolate. Amelia, I love you. He looked into my eyes, backing away as he spoke, constantly repeating those 3 words, I love you. I love you. Until he backed into the cage, helped my sister up and removed the collar from her neck. Just when everyone thought he was going to release my sister, a knife suddenly appeared in his hand and the sharp blade slashed across my sister's neck. In the next second, a bang sounded. My sister fell to the ground. James also fell to the ground. The bullet hit James right in the middle of his forehead, leaving a smear of red. His eyes were still fixed on me, with a smile on his lips. My legs went weak as if I had lost all my strength, and I fell down. Amelia! Lucas caught me. After making sure that I was okay, he roared angrily, why didn't you tell me? Who told you to take risks on your own? Amelia, do you want to die? I hugged him. Brother, it's over. Everything is over. Lucas was still in fear, but he still hugged me. It's over. After leaving the villa, I got into Lucas's car. He took me to the police station to make a statement. When I came out of the police station, it was noon. The autumn sunshine was especially bright. I opened the car window to let the cool autumn wind blow in and looked out of the window. Lucas controlled the steering wheel with one hand and held my hand with the other, squeezing it gently. I turned my head to look at him and smiled at each other. The golden sunlight shone in, illuminating our smiles.